2018 was a fantastic year for movies, specifically superhero movies. This year we've got 8, which is the most that's been released in a single year in terms of superhero movies. And for the most part, they've all been pretty good. Okay, except for one, but we'll get into that in a bit. Here's my ranking of the 2018 superhero movies from worst to best, 8 to first. Number 8, worst, Venom. I really wanted to like Venom. I still wanted to like Venom when I heard how garbage it was, even before it came out. When I finally watched it in the theaters, the first 30 minutes were okay, just kind of boring, but then the rest happened, and I realized Venom's only on screen for 10 minutes total. Yeah, what you see of the trailer of Venom, that's about it in the movie. He looks really cool, but he doesn't do anything. It's like if Boba Fett had his own movie in the original Star Wars movies. He's there and he looks cool, but he doesn't do anything. Venom not only fails as a superhero movie, it checks the boxes of a necessary origin movie in weird spots. He doesn't get his powers till midway through. He's not called Venom or known his name until 2/3 of the way in the movie. And the only big battle is at the very end, and it lasts 5 minutes. It has a little bit of Fantastic Four syndrome, if you know what I'm saying. Venom also doesn't really work as a movie on its own. Even if you take away the superhero aspect and the fact that it's based on a comic book, it's all over the place. There's character development that is very rushed or is non-existent. There's story plots that don't go anywhere, or if they do, they just kind of cut off. They don't get any actual resolution. Nothing really makes sense, and even when it is kind of fun, it's not fun enough to save it. Rating, 4 out of 10. Dishonorable mention, Thor Ragnarok. This doo-doo eating, booger picking, nose licking, fart sniffing, poop brain movie is so garbage. I may just combust. I don't know what to say. I may just combust.
Just combust and it comes out.
And really quick, 0 out of 10. Number 7, Incredibles 2. Now, before you instantly dislike this video, close this tab and hate me forever, I want you to bear with me. Incredibles 2 was not a bad movie, but it was a movie we've seen before 14 years ago. Sure, the beats weren't exactly the same as one. I mean, the villains were kind of different, but there's still the matter of the fact of, let's ask these deep superhero questions, and will our family work together as a superhero team? And the only thing that's really different from the first one is the roles of Mr. Incredible and Mrs. Incredible. Well, in this one, she's back to Elastigirl doing her own thing, but it's still the idea of we need to work together as a family and do things right, and what's the right thing mean? These questions were cool in the first time with the first Incredibles. In 2004, those questions worked. They were themes not brought up by past superhero movies. They're really insightful and interesting to discover and discuss while being an animated movie. But this time around, it doesn't work. And in terms of actual animation, it doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, the only thing that really looks nice is the family and people. They don't look like they're all tired or on some kind of dangerous drug. Overall, though, it's not bad. It's just a shame that it has the Force Awakens syndrome. Rating, 7 out of 10. Number 6, Aquaman. Aquaman was the fun ride that DC's needed for a couple years now. I mean, Wonder Woman was definitely a step in the right direction, but it still had that issue of being really serious, and while that's not always a bad thing, that's just what they've been doing since Man of Steel. Seriousness works in a movie, especially a superhero movie, and not saying every movie has to be a Thor Ragnarok, but I would like some lightheartedness, and that's honestly just what Aquaman was. From the first frame to the last, it's super fun, it's interesting, it's cheesy as all get up, and I know that's not going to click with everyone, but I had a good time with it. The story is nothing to write home about. It's very basic, you must be king, I don't want to be king, I guess I'll be king. But it's the adventure of getting to that point is what makes it interesting. There's a great score that reminded me of old movies like Tron and Blade Runner. The visuals are gorgeous. Atlantis, whenever you're on it, or under it, I should say. Whenever you're in it. Whenever you're in Atlantis, it looks wonderful. It's not just all blue. It's not just Little Mermaid where they kind of put some colors in here and there. There's lots of bright colors. There's some dark colors that contrast. There's some reds for where there's the hot lava pit thingies. I don't know. I'm not an ecologist. I don't know how water works. I just drink it. In any case, Aquaman also takes place on land and sea, which is really interesting considering that's what the character is. I thought that was really well done and well thought out. Aquaman takes place as much on land as it does in Atlantis, which is really interesting and kind of fully fleshes out the character of Arthur Curry since he was born of both. His mom is the former queen of Atlantis. His dad is a simple lighthouse watcher, fisherman guy. He's the old man by the sea. Well, he's not old in the beginning. I suppose no one is. But Aquaman was a joyride. It's got super cool action. Every other scene, a character will be talking, and it's pretty interesting. It's nice. It's simple. An explosion happens out of nowhere, and then boom, we're instantly to a fight scene. It happens at least 3 times in the movie. I've only seen it once so far, but I thought it was hilarious. I mean, it annoyed me on the 3rd time, but I also kind of laughed because it's like, what the heck? Why is an explosion here again? But in any case, it's a very fun ride that's very memorable. It's also 2.5 hours long with trailers, but definitely doesn't feel like a movie that does that. And to me, that's a very good thing. Final rating, 7.25 out of 10. Number 5, Teen Titans Go. I never thought I would like a movie based around Teen Titans Go as much as I do right now. The cartoon, when I first heard about it, was a big slap in the face to my childhood, along with millions of other people who grew up with the classic Cartoon Network show. Robin, Beast Boy, Starfire, the gang, all just looking great in a very serious but sometimes emotional as well as comedic show worked. But then they transitioned to fully comedic and almost sitcom matter with a really weird chibi style of animation, and it didn't click with a lot of people. In fact, it did the opposite. It pissed a lot of people off, including myself. So when I first heard that a Teen Titans Go movie was being made, I was far less than excited. I watched the first trailer, and even from there, my idea had kind of changed. They made a reference to Guardians of the Galaxy, which I didn't even know they could do or would do. I thought that was super weird, hearing a character from one universe be in another. There's even a Stan Lee cameo in the movie. May he rest in peace. A true legend. But the movie is just so stupid and so funny that I absolutely love it. I saw it 3 times, and I don't regret any of those times. I want to watch it right now as I'm talking about it, because it's so silly. It's off-the-wall ridiculous. The animation changes styles like 5 times within it. And if Spider-Verse hadn't come out this year, it probably would have been my favorite animated movie. But Teen Titans Go is a very self-aware look at what it means to be a superhero in the context of how many superhero movies there are. And that fit that are released this year, again, with how many we've gotten. Not even just in the past couple years, but this year alone, to have 8 movies in 1 year of one genre is pretty mind-blowing. This takes an honest and hilarious approach of what it means to really be a superhero, or what makes a good superhero movie, but kind of plays into a general idea of heroism, and true heroism. It's cheesy, of course, but also hilarious and notable enough. There's stuff that a general audience will laugh at, but even more things that a comic book and superhero fan like me really appreciated. There's a lot of dark humor in it, too, for being an aimed at kids movie. There's so many jokes in there that'll fly way over kids' heads. The last line is Robin going up to the camera and saying, "Kids, ask your parents where babies come from." And it gets me every time I think about it. Also had one of the best after credit scenes this year, and of any movie in a while. I squealed like a girl when I saw it in theaters. Final rating, 8 out of 10. Number 4, Ant-Man and the Wasp. The first Ant-Man movie was, without a doubt, weird. But it was so weird, and it's Marvel Studios, so it kind of worked. Admittedly, it fell into some traps of a superhero origin movie, specifically Iron Man, and later on Doctor Strange would do the same thing. But it also was a really interesting heist movie that had limited action until the very end, making it a more satisfying third act. Ant-Man the Wasp, however, is a chase movie through and through. It is constantly exciting. There's very, very rarely any stops. It's very entertaining throughout the whole movie. There's so many little jokes here and there. Some I don't catch the first time. I think I watched this movie like 4 or 5 times just because how much fun it was. Like it looked fun when you're in the quantum realm. It looks gorgeous. I mean, you can tell it's all fake with CGI, but it's cool just imagining being there and the special effects they used. It also has a really cool story on its own. It's a very self-encased movie. I mean, there's obviously references to past Marvel movies. Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne, and Scott Lang are all on the run after the events of Civil War when Ant-Man decides to help out Captain America. but it makes a really cool story going from there. It's been a couple years, obviously, since it happened, as he's on the last bit of his probation, or I guess house arrest, more accurately. And he's just trying to be a good father. He's just trying to be a better person and just be more of himself. I mean, he doesn't exactly feel bad about helping out Cap, but he understands that it wasn't under the best circumstances. Regardless, the story is very interesting. It's not the typical, well, this guy's the bad guy and this person's a good guy. There's some blurred lines here and there, especially towards the end. And it's satisfying to see a superhero movie where the villain doesn't die at the end, especially in some weirdly dramatic way. It's really cool to see people come together versus people go against one another. Ant-Man and the Wasp is also very refreshing after watching a very serious Black Panther and even more serious and heart-wrenching Avengers Infinity War. So needless to say, it was a nice treat. There's some, like I said, some really cool action throughout. It's very intense, but also lighthearted. It's weird. It found that weird line of being really cool and really hardcore, but also being super family-friendly. I mean, it got a PG-13 rating, but it kind of barely deserved it. I mean, this is obviously the most kid-aimed, family-friendly superhero movie in a while. I mean, obviously there's the Spider-Man movies, but even they sometimes have some darker elements or innuendos here and there, and Ant-Man has very limited amounts of those. It's just a very simple, fun story through and through, but one that's also worth watching. Final rating, 8.25 out of 10. Number 3, Deadpool 2. A lot of people really didn't like Deadpool 2 for some reason, but I personally enjoyed it even more than the first one.
Once Upon a Time.
And we're not going to count Once Upon a Deadpool. But Deadpool 2 for me was what I wanted out of a Deadpool sequel and more. It was funnier, more entertaining, a lot more action, and just general story than the first one. I also found it to be a lot more emotional, which I like that take on Wade Wilson. I don't know a whole lot of Deadpool comics. The only one I really read was Deadpool Kills Deadpool. And it was really entertaining. It was funny, gory, stupid, but kind of got deep at the end. And that's where Deadpool 2 was tonally as well. I mean, from the very beginning, it's emotional. No spoilers. But there's a lot that happens that you don't expect. But it takes this in a new direction. What we know of Deadpool is taken in a new direction. Old friends are admittedly put on the back burner, but then brought into the light towards the end. New faces make an appearance, but they're not made to overshadow said old beloved characters. And it's very nice. It's a very sweet movie that is shell-shocked with gore, but that's kind of what makes Deadpool Deadpool. There's so many scenes. The ending when Wade is talking to Vanessa, and there's that beautiful cover of Take On Me done by Aha. It's the MTV Unplugged version. Gets me every time I watch it. Even the third time, I was really choking out full on sniffling in the theater. And it's a very, very well done superhero movie. Final rating, 8.5 out of 10. Number 2, Black Panther. Black Panther was such a unique and original movie that it at times barely feels like an actual superhero movie. I mean, obviously it's based off the comics, which may add some shots right out of the comics, and it follows the very first run of Black Panther very accurately, and I appreciated that. I read an epic collection, as it's called, from Marvel, which tells the story of the first 30 issues of Black Panther. That's what it is. In the first 30 issues, tells the story of the Black Panther. And the movie is just so well done. It's a cultural celebration. It's a great action movie, sci-fi, fantasy, however you want to put it. It is at times admittedly Marvel's Lion King, but I don't think that's an outright bad thing. It just kind of one of those movies where you definitely notice the similarities. But in any case, it's very original, very well thought out. All the characters are very complex. T'Challa is this hero, but he wants to be king, but he doesn't know what that quite means. He doesn't understand the true, full history of Wakanda's past and is learning to deal with that and struggle with that. His mother, the queen, is still dealing with the death of his father, T'Chaka, from Civil War, where we first saw Black Panther, who was introduced very well then. He's super cool, very interesting, very mysterious. The movie also has a ton of good lines. I mean, we've all heard Wakanda Forever, I think 1,000 times at this point. Poor Chadwick Boseman is tired of doing it, but it's cool. It's a very cool saying, and the little like hand motion. I can't quite do it, but Wakanda Forever. It's very original, very very unique, and it goes without saying that Eric Killmonger, the movie's villain, is one of the best, and not just in a recent superhero movie, in a recent movie period. He's the epitome of what an anti-hero should be, in that he is an anti-version of our main protagonist, the hero. He's not even an outright villain. In some cases, he does very villainous things, but it's to get his point across. And the motives behind his actions are very understandable and relatable, and that's what makes him a flat out good character and even better antagonist than just a mustache twirling henchman, some generic bad guy. He's very set apart. Him and T'Challa have a very similar actual story. They have the same homeland, as it turns out, and he's very interesting, very well done, and is like the perfect match for T'Challa. My only concern is that moving forward, I feel like the movies aren't going to be quite as good as this one, but we'll have to wait and see. But Black Panther itself, on its own right now, is fantastic. It's a solid 9 out of 10. Number 1, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse has no right being as good as it is. I watched the first trailer for this movie more interested than excited. After the second trailer was released, I was definitely more excited than interested. I knew going in I was probably going to love this movie. And to no one's surprise, I did. I'm a very big Spider-Man fan, and this took what we know about Spider-Man in a very cool new direction. It addressed the fact that there is a multiverse, as well as very easily and notably hints to the former Peter Parker that we see in the trailer probably being the original Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, which I think was a nice touch. It's never outright said, but it's, again, heavily hinted at and alluded to. So my headcanon is that he is, which makes it cooler, makes it interesting. I mean, it's still under Sony, so you know they're going to slap that in there. And surprisingly, for a Sony movie, a Sony animated movie, it's so good. It's so beautiful. And not even just in terms of visuals, but those are worth talking about. There's so many bright colors, dark colors to contrast with that. The whole movie plays out like a comic book. It looks like a comic book. There's thought bubbles that appear above Miles' head as he's going about his day, and when he first gets his powers, the transitions are little boxes like you would in a comic book. And some things really take getting used to, as there's the blur effect. The blur effect was in older comics of the 60s, 70s, either in a misprint or also just when they forgot to add detail to background characters and objects. And so for this movie, it works artistically in the sense of those people are just in the background. You'll see scenes of people around a TV or around an object, and the people themselves will be blurry, but the actual main point of interest is in high definition. It's very detailed. And I really like that. It's also the cool effects, like every time a punch is thrown, there's a little pow or bam effect written on screen like you see it. At one point, Peter Parker Spider-Man is tapping on a keyboard and it says clackety clackety clack across the top of the screen. Little stuff like that is just so interesting and makes me giggle. There's also several shots that look like they could be right out of the comic, and most likely are, and I just love that. I really appreciate it as a diehard superhero fan and as a huge comic book nerd of just how comic books are written, how comic books pan out, how they're printed. It's a triumph in animation. It's so gorgeous, and the story is too. It takes a lot of depth to explain what exactly the Spider-Verse is, but does so without beating the audience's head over it. It's not that it's too important or dumbing it down for the audience. It's just explaining it on a very base level so that when it hits that climax at the end, it all makes sense and we all see how it kind of works. The Spider-Verse characters are awesome. Spider-Ham will always get a giggle out of you. Penny Parker is just so entertaining to watch, and Spider-Man Noir from Nicolas Cage is just so funny, but so cool at the same time that he probably was one of my favorites of all the characters. In any case, Spider-Verse also has a great element in that it takes this whole end of the world or city's going to be exploded thing, but doesn't put that as the main focus until the end. It's rather the interpersonal connections between Miles and Peter, Miles and his parents, Miles and his uncle, that really drive the story. It's a very emotional one. Whether you're laughing or crying or jumping, there's quite a few jump scares, which I really didn't expect. And they get me every time I watch it. I've seen it 3 times already. And it just came out. I know, I'm a nerd. But it's a really, really well done movie, and I would love for Sony to do more animated Spider-Man projects and just put a cap on the live action, even if there's the inevitable Venom sequel. Spider-Verse is a solid 9.25 out of 10. Number 0, Avengers Infinity War. Okay, honestly, this is just because I miscounted and realized that there was 9 superhero movies instead of 8, but I think Infinity War kind of deserves its own special rating, just because this movie was phenomenal. It was 10 years of build-up. It was so just really weird and out there, but worked and was complex, and everything else I already said about it in my previous Infinity War review. But the bottom line is that no movie this year really matched up with its epic proportions. Structurally, yeah, there's some issues, but I don't really mind that when it's just so entertaining for being almost a 3-hour movie and really gets me every time I watch it. Gets me more when I'm more excited to see either other Easter eggs or see what could potentially happen in Avengers 4, what's alluded to. It is such a big movie because it is a part 1 of a very big story, and that's why I love it. That's why it was my favorite superhero movie of 2018, and probably one of my favorites of all time right now. The movie was made for fans like me who grew up literally watching the Iron Man and Captain America movies, but not thinking much of it until realizing that they were connected as you got older, and then realizing that they were going to build to something when you got even more older, and then you're in college, and Avengers Infinity War is right here. It's something awesome, and I'll never be able to take back the night I watched Avengers Infinity War. One of my favorite memories of recent self-history, I guess. But in any case, the movie is so good. I get not everyone's going to love it as much as I do, but honestly, that's fine. The movie's not made to appeal to exactly everyone, even though the general audience should enjoy it. It's made for the die-hard fans like me who love everything the MCU's done so far, as there's references to everything the MCU has done so far. And honestly, just the numbers alone show. With its record-breaking, 250 million opening weekend beating Star Wars out, like that alone shows just how much people love these characters and how much people want to see these movies. The other number we're not going to worry about is the critics, because according to the critics, Teen Titans Go is better than Avengers Infinity War. In any case, Avengers Infinity War is awesome and is easily the best superhero movie of 2018. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you like this, give this a fat old like and subscribe. Tell your parents about it. Tell your parents' parents. Tell your friends' parents. Not your friends. Your friends aren't as cool as your friends' parents. Just saying. No, I'm just kidding. Tell everyone about it. Like and subscribe, and thanks for being patient. I know this year of putting out a whopping 3 videos, but life happens. Life happens. I'll be looking to do some more in the near future, so stay tuned. Elastigirl's